call to the stage Naheeda. She's a head teacher. What we love is that she actually turned a failing primary school into an outstanding Ofsted-rated school. And she's also leads the Embedding Race Equality Steering Group in Lewisham. And she has a focus on raising the outcomes for Black children in the borough. So you are a community champion, you're also a champion within education. And I guess because you did your NQT, you had a mentor at some point in your career. Just about. But please welcome Naheeda to the stage.
So here's the quote: you're not a drop in the ocean, you're the entire ocean in a drop. But why do so many of us feel like a drop in the ocean? Some of the things that I do, but ultimately I'm an educator for 32 years. I'll tell you how old I am. A child asked me today, I said 532. I'm a head teacher for 18 years, and I'm an activist who believes in building communities, building resilience in my children, in my teachers, in my parents, in my community, and in Lewisham and beyond. So this is a piece of work I did, still do, still believe in it. It was about tackling the inequality that exists specifically for Black Caribbean children in our borough, the disproportionate exclusions. And 3.5 years later, we've created systemic structures to hold schools to account. 100% of schools now, we can say, what are you doing for race equality? What's happening to the students in your school? Why are you excluding students? Because you signed the pledge. So it took time to navigate the fragility of leaders who hadn't been held to account for a very long time, to my shame for the students that we failed, Lewisham failed. But now the good news is, in part, but change takes a long time, and people will default back to their behaviours. Many of them are unconscious, but now they know that there will be accountability. We're listening to parents more, we're excluding children less, and every governing body that takes place in Lewisham asks about racism and anti-racism. So I'm about creating schools as safe, brave spaces, building relationships to develop resilience in children, creating a curriculum and an approach to teaching and learning that makes every child feel, I belong in this school, I belong in this school, this is my school and I will succeed in this school. I believe leaders cannot just talk about teaching and learning. They have to talk about social justice. The world is not fair. And it isn't fair for many children who walk through our gates, and we can't ignore that. I make sure that every parent, every person that comes in, feels as welcome, more welcome than I ever felt in school. So this is a really powerful image, but I want you to focus on this person here, because this is how I saw myself entering school at 5, without any English. My parents came from Pakistan. I was part of the second generation. I'm one of 10 children waiting for boys. They had 6 girls. So I was that child that was being treated like everyone else, but I couldn't speak English. I was different to everyone else. I was the only brown person in the school, and I had a lot of very unpleasant experiences that then became quite aggressive and violent as I got older, because that's what happens. So I fulfilled all the expectations school had of me. I failed every exam. Got to a secondary modern, which was even more vicious, because in those days, young people, we sorted people out at the age of 11. We said, you're the clever ones, you'll go to university, and you're the not very clever ones, you're going to go here. But when you put children together who all feel like failures, they don't treat each other very well. So, of course, I'm the little brown person in the room. I'm treated worse than everybody, because teachers are so disillusioned and disaffected because they're in a school which nobody's got any expectations for. They have no self-confidence. No, they won't mention I teach at that school because nobody mentions the school, and it goes on. So I learned very early on that the school system was bad. By the age of 7, and this is a true story that my husband sometimes says when you tell me, I just don't believe you. I had lost both my parents and ended up between pillar and post and all sorts of things happening. But what I needed was a school like this, and I needed teachers who believed that they needed to fight and change the system, that it wasn't fair the way it was. So I'm Naheeda, I'm an educator of 32 years, I'm a head teacher of 18 years, but I am an activist. I look at this picture a lot because for me it's what every child deserves. I didn't get it. They deserve to have teachers who believe in them. They deserve to have teachers who are kind and warm. They deserve to have teachers who use a language that takes children to another place, not dumbs them down with a language they think we understand. Children need to have a place to sleep and good food. But when you're moved from pillar to post like I was, you're not really saying to people, I don't like the food on my plate. You eat what you're given, and you certainly don't sleep at night. So how do you go into the classroom, even if you do get the same as everybody else, and make use of it? Because you don't exist. You just don't exist in that space. Now, the reason every child, and every child deserves this, is because every child has a future, an unlimited potential, and they don't fulfill it, and it is a crime. It's not acceptable. And the reason they don't fulfill it, there's nothing wrong with the child. It's because of this. If you are a head teacher, you have to be an activist because toxic stress is poverty. Not living in a home that's warm, not having shoes that fit, feeling like people are looking at you for not only the colour of your skin because of the clothes you're wearing, because you don't smell that great, because you've got head lice and all the things that happen when you live in poverty. It's racism, it's discrimination, it's prejudice. And if you come from a family that's got generational trauma, racist experience, poverty, you're not going to grow with strong sense of self. You're not going to be able to make use of the world of the classroom. You're not present in that classroom. Toxic stress causes prejudice, discrimination, and low expectation. The teachers, too many leaders in our schools are not aware of how they operate, how subtly and nuanced their interactions with children and communities are, which is why leading the race equality work was such a privilege. What we know about executive function, so they're basically, I'm not doing a lecture on that tonight, but they're basically the skills we need to get things done in life. And we know that children and adults who experience enormous stress, racism, discrimination, poverty, their executive function doesn't develop as well as other children. Doesn't mean it can't. In the right conditions, it will, and I'm an example of that. I ended up going to university, read the book, The Pedagogy of the Present, found my purpose, and was able to move through the system, ended up becoming a head teacher. Who would believe that? So I come back to this picture, and I look at it and I think, how are we going to create classrooms that do all of this for our students if we don't talk with our teachers about discrimination, about inequality? If we don't teach children, regardless of where they come from, regardless of the stress, if we don't teach executive function skills, we have to do everything else. Teachers, are there any teachers in the space? Can we give them a round of applause? So teachers have to do so much in the classroom. They have to know 30 different children. They have to know how to challenge each and every one of them. By challenge, I mean, make sure that every child wants to come because they're going to make progress that day. They have to develop their language. They have to be warm with every child. And there are some children that doesn't work. So you have to find out. I had a child in my class this morning, has moved around from school to school. This morning she pulled a chunk out of another child's hair. And I had to think, how am I going to work with you to be able to reflect on what you've done? How am I going to get you into my room and actually want to come into my room and not feel like she's coming after me? So I went, found her, sat next to her, connected with her, mentored her, and thought, you are a beautiful human being. Yes, you've made this terrible, and I've got to, there's a hurt here. The child whose hair was sitting on my desk, you know, I had to deal with that and deal with the parents. After she pulled her hair out, she rang her own parent. Well, she told you, I'm ringing 999, I'm calling the police. But actually, so this is live, this happened today in my school. But she didn't call the police, she actually called her dad. So strangely enough, by the time she came of her own volition, she came into my room because we sat and we talked. And I said, come on, let's go and talk. And you know, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you that since you've come to this school, you started to take responsibility. Let's talk about what happened today. And she did actually got up and she came with me and we sat. Her dad was outside, which was really useful actually, because I thought, I didn't let him come in the room because she had caused the loss of the hair. The child who'd lost his hair was there, so I had to do all of this work. But that's what I'm saying is, if I hadn't have had that conversation, connected with her, mentored, this learning would have happened. It can't happen unless you connect with children. The first message I have for all educators is be activists, understand what your children and families are experiencing before they walk through that gate, understand their pain. So when they're getting angry, when they're losing their executive function, because you're another institution that's labelling their child, blaming their child, have some humility, leaders, teachers, and listen. So in our wonderful school, beautiful school, we work very hard on understanding our role as activists. So on top of all of the lesson planning my teachers do, they know that unless we stand up to the policies that are created by 7% of our population, 7% of this country's population went to independent school. Did anybody here go to independent school? I hope you didn't. If you did, it's fine. If you did, it's fine. It's inclusive hair. That's 7% of the population occupy more than 50% of government spaces. They are over 60% of the judicial system, over 40% of the media. So that 7% are telling us, the many, the 93%, I told you I'm an activist, how to live our lives, telling us we're not working hard enough, that everyone can get it if they work hard enough. But they're coming out. Do they experience toxic stress? To what extent do people who have that level of privilege understand what happens in the classroom? So when they tell me what I should be doing in my school, I have a lot to tell them back. So my teachers are so amazing because by understanding the classroom, they change the world for our children. And they are not victims to any of this. They don't blame our families. They don't have these views. They don't judge our families. They don't just think it's about working harder, because they challenge what they're told. And finally, 32 years later, the reason I do this is because it comes from here. I'm an educator, 32 years, a head teacher for 18, and I'm an activist, and it's been a pleasure